What you're about to experience is one man's quest to see beyond the tumultuous period we're in and to envision what lies just beyond our grasp, yet well within our reach. Welcome to Larry Rifkin's America Trends, where the future has arrived, and it's just in time.
John just asked a question. Who thinks of this stuff? And that is really a great question for AmericaTrendsPodcast.com. Welcome back. And we're so glad that you are coming back and back and back. Our audience is growing, John.
That's wonderful. Yeah,
well,
nice
they ate a
the
lot over the holiday weekend.
Oh,
so
that way.
Our audience is growing.
Oh, that's not good.
Oh, no, not like that. No, really. And we really do appreciate it. And we've got a lot of content up. I think we have more than the average podcast.
I think
really
so,
do.
too. I really do,
We're publishing twice a week,
yes,
at least.
We are.
On Tuesdays and
hard
Thursdays.
At work.
So, we're hard at work. Or we're hardly at work.
Yeah, that too.
Well, a lot of people are accusing a generation of really throwing us off the rails. Oh, I'm Larry Rifkin. That's John Crofts.
Hey.
And we are parents of the millennials.
We are.
And we are proud of it.
Yeah, my kids are good.
Yeah, my kids are good, too. And, they're really smart. And they're technologically very savvy. And I think they've got a great work ethic. Many, we are told, want to have their own businesses. They don't love working for other people, but, hey, maybe they just smartened up before we did. We always work for the man. You always work for the man.
That's true.
But they don't want to work for the man. And it's not because they want to be gender neutral. They just don't want to work for somebody else.
No, I understand that.
But they do like to work, I think. I
No,
think they're a good generation.
I think all the Xers that I know.
Xers? Or are you talking about the millennials?
I'm all confused.
X's, millennials.
No, the millennials I know, my in-laws' kids and my kids, I mean, they're all very work-oriented and, very thoughtful. And, I think they're probably better at, with people than maybe I was when I was younger. So,
And you don't think that some of the toys and the gadgets have kept them constrained from wanting interpersonal relationships?
Well, I don't know. Now, that's a good question because they don't seem to want to get married and have families and stuff. They just want to do their thing.
Do their thing. Well, they don't want to do it in the success sequence. That's what one study recently told us, that those who actually do it in the order that many people prescribe, where they go to school and then they get married and then they have a child, that's working out better than for those who go out of sequence. This is the latest study, the millennial success, marriage, kids, and the success sequence among young adults. They say that 55% of 28 to 34-year-old millennial parents had their first child before marriage.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Yeah, that got you.
That got me. Yeah.
That got your tongue.
I haven't, my kids haven't done that yet.
No, they haven't gone out of order yet. They say that millennials who follow the success sequence almost always avoid poverty and have a clear path into the middle class. And that is not a racially, focused thing. It's all races. That's what they're saying, at least from this study. Then there's another study, though, that says that millennials really have a problem and they're having panic attacks and a lot of anxiety when it comes to being prepared for leaving university life and going on to what they call real life. More than half of millennials, John, and I find this to be ridiculous because I think they're using many different modes to pay their bills, Apple Pay, this, that, and the other. But it's said that more than half, don't know how to pay a bill or the real costs of rent. I mean, I find that hard to believe.
I find that hard to believe, too. But I understand the anxiety side of it because I really think that they haven't been prepared for, they go through school. And I think it's a generation that got a lot more coddling in school and stuff. It wasn't like, sink or swim,
So the baby boom parents,
I think,
and the helicopter parents, we wanted to hover over them. We wanted to give them some of the things perhaps that we didn't get. Our parents were great, the greatest generation, but they didn't have a lot to give us.
Right.
When we go back and look at the homes we lived in, or the one car at best, and so we perhaps wanted to lavish.
I think we did. We tried to do better, and that I think that affected them. I think I believe that in the study there. I think.
Well, this other study does say that around half are anxious at the prospect of really starting a life on their own, leaving the basement, leaving the university, whatever it may be, and 27% are having panic attacks, and that's not something that we like to see.
No.
On the other hand, there are many millennials who are out there, and they're having a tremendous impact, not only because of their numbers, but because of their buying power. They're having tremendous impact on so many industries.
Yeah, they're changing. They're changing everything. The brick and mortar stores. They're really changing everything around how they buy cars.
Or is a car really going to be the utility that we all thought?
Exactly.
I mean, you and I could never have imagined a life without a car.
No.
And that was the symbol of
was
America.
Freedom.
Yeah. I mean, the Beach Boys, my group. And I mean, and we're going to have fun until Daddy takes the T-Bird away. But that's not what they're looking at today. They've got Uber and Lyft, and why bother? Or ultimately, maybe they're not going to love the feel of driving a car because it's going to be a driverless experience.
Right. It's going to be a whole different experience for them, yes.
And as it comes to homes, because so many of them really want to nest in urban environments, it's too expensive for them to have a home. So they're happy to rent, and they're happy to have a lot of experiences in their life. I know my son just came back from Italy, and he's just a world traveler these days because of the business that he's in, and he doesn't want to be fettered with a lawn and a dog and so on and so forth. But they are really buffeting so many different industries, and it's really fascinating when you talk about it. And we found a woman who herself is so young, so vibrant, and so vivacious.
Yeah, she was fun.
Yeah, but she's not even a millennial.
No,
she's
a Zer.
What is a Z? Now, a Z used to be a sporty car, right? You used to drive a Z.
240Z.
Yeah. Now it's a generation. So she's only 19 years of age. Her name is Pavlina Osta. And she calls herself a millennial pop culture social commentator. And she likes to keep it real on all things political or the pop culture that the millennials are building. Even though she looks at it, she has to look up to the millennials. Yeah. Because she's so young.
I just found it fascinating she was working in radio.
I know, and she said she has produced national programs, and we're saying, wait a minute, you are the tender age of 19. That's hard to believe, but she's a wonderful young woman.
She is.
And lively. You're going to love the conversation. And we pose a lot of questions about what impact the millennials are having on this and that. I think you're going to find this a very interesting episode of America Trends Podcast.
Well, let's get her on. .com.
Thank you, John. I forgot. Are we .org, .com, .edu? What are we? We're .com.
.com,
Oh,
yes.
please keep coming back. Joining us on America Trends Podcast is Pavlina Jaine Osta. And how would you describe yourself, Pavlina?
Hi. So I have been called, lots of things from radio host to executive producer for a lot of national shows. But when I'm talking about, different things about millennials, I really like to, consider myself a millennial and pop culture commentator, I guess.
And do we have to really have a different looking glass when we're looking at the millennials? I mean, I'm a baby boomer. John, who's with me, is a baby boomer. So do we really even begin to understand the life and the world of millennials?
Yeah, and it's so funny. I'm actually Generation Z because I'm 19, which is a generation right after millennials. And I definitely think, all of the hype, that millennials are getting, I definitely think it's well-deserved just because millennials are so different than any other generation that we've, have ever seen, that's, come into the workforce and had such a big impact in our economy and everything. And just because they're so different. They grew up differently. The way they see the world is just completely different. I think it's fascinating.
But we, the baby boomers, we are the children of the greatest generation, or so it's called.
Right.
And, of course, they are our children generally. Why is it that they're so different? Will they begin to look more like baby boomers over time? And how distinctive are they from the baby boom culture as you assess it?
Right. So I feel like every generation kind of, once they've grown up, they've matured a little bit, they eventually kind of get into the norms, I guess, of, the older ages and everything. Like this one study that we're going to talk about, some of the industries are kind of dying off with millennials, because they're not into golfing as much. They're not into shopping at malls. They're into online shopping. So I think, millennials, they're really affecting everyone here just because they're affecting past generations and also, the upcoming generations just because no one wants to shop. Like I said, no one wants to shop at malls anymore. So a lot of things are being moved online. So they, what they're doing and how they're affecting what's currently happening, how they're affecting like the economy and like what's happening in the media. It's going to affect everyone.
And they, of course, growing up with technology. Is that really the defining characteristic of why they're breaking away and looking at the world and affecting the world so differently?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Social media, I think, has made a major impact on, like I said, how they view the world, how they interact with certain people and what they are attracted to, what they're not attracted to. It affects how they want to go shopping. If like I literally do all of my grocery shopping online. I don't even go into grocery stores anymore. So
really?
I think technology has, I also
now you're only 19. So, you're only 19?
Yes.
And you're the Z generation. Wow. Tell us briefly, what is the Z generation like, and how different are you from the millennials?
Right. So there's not as much about Generation Z, just because, we're not the biggest generation right now that's affecting everything, not like the millennials. And so Generation Z, what have come out with them and everything, just because I'm like pretty much the first couple years of Generation Z. It's like 22, 23, I think is the oldest. And I'm not even sure when it ends. I think it's like... And
your parents are who? The Generation X?
Yes, baby boomers, yeah.
Oh, really?
So, and then I have I have two older siblings who are millennials. I have an older sister who's like 11 years older than me, and she's a millennial. And then I have an older brother who's at the very end of being a millennial, and he's 22. So, yeah. But yeah.
Now, when we think about millennials, and they are threatening dozens of industries according to a new study, you mentioned a couple of things. By the way, I feel like a millennial because I agree with them. They don't buy napkins. I mean, I'm reading that. They like to use paper towels, and I'm one who, when I'm left by myself without my wife and no social graces, I would rather use a Scott towel, if you will, than a napkin. But why is that something the purview of millennials?
Right. Well, first of all, I've never bought napkins. I don't think I've ever bought those with my family. I don't think I've ever gotten them. I've definitely never gotten them by myself unless I'm at Chipotle and I just grabbed a bunch or something. But I think there are definitely, like I was saying before, like certain industries that are just being affected by millennials. And I, of course, think that like one of them is golfing. They're like, oh, golfing is gonna die out. Millennials are killing off golfing, and it's just like, I really don't think that's the case. Like, and it's funny because I was in the radio station this morning, and we were talking about golfing and everything, and they were asking what one of the hosts, like, what his scores were or something, and I knew nothing about golfing, so I could kind of see it, but I also feel like I don't know a whole lot of young golfers anyway, so I think that's just like if someone's going to grow into it, they might be like a little bit older when they get into golfing. And yeah, so I just think it's interesting. Well,
they are playing fewer rounds according to this study, and they're watching it on TV less frequently. And it is estimated that if this apathy continues, that within 52 years, golf will disappear. What are we going to do with all those golf courses? I mean, they're all over the place. What can we repurpose all that land? Maybe we can just let it grow and graze on it or something.
Right? I don't know. I feel like, if anything, it'll be like in the movies or something where everything is just completely industrialized and buildings everywhere. So if anything, I feel like it would just turn into more housing residents. You know,
yeah, perhaps.
That kind of thing.
You know, you point out, or the study does, and you reflect that in fact today there are bigger industries. We're kind of being a little peripheral here in terms of some of the major industries. But when you think about it, the two that they might be having the most impact on because of the importance of these industries are the automobile industry and the home buying industry. And those are really serious trends.
Yeah, no, definitely. And kind of going on the same like tangent as the golf thing, like millennials not really having cars or anything. Like living in New York, I will definitely never need a car here just because there's taxis everywhere. There's Ubers. Like the whole Uber industry, I feel like Uber is its own, you know what I mean? It has its own category kind of thing. Uber, Lyft, there's like so many different ones. It's so much easier and you're saving so much more money. Like you don't have to worry about car insurance. You don't have to worry about where to park your car. You don't have to worry about all the, filling up the gas and everything. It's like, oh, I can pay $15 to go wherever. And of course the pricings are different, like where you are. Like living in New York, it's so expensive just to go to Midtown or something, even in an Uber. But buying cars I don't think millennials think it's, a good purchase. You know what I mean? Or like, and if you have to commute every day to, like at work or something and you of course need a car, then there's that reason to get a car. But if you're, if you're like, and you're just like living in New York and you're not going to need a car. Like, there's no reason to have one.
Well, how much is this change in terms of ride sharing and not owning your own automobile with all the attendant costs a reflection of the urbanization of millennials, that they love the high volume ticket of a New York City or a Boston, and that this is making them really look again at what their priorities are and what they really need to live in this urban environment?
All of the FIDI, which is the financial district, that's where I live in New York, there are so many young people here, and I know, almost every kid from college or from my my high school are going to school in big city kind of areas. You know what I mean? They've all traveled to Boston, or they all are somewhere in San Francisco, or they're all somewhere in New York. You know what I mean? Like they all kind of gravitated towards these big cities, which is where you would have more of an Uber kind of thing. So I definitely think I guess the placement of millennials and where they're going and what they need and everything, that's of course going to affect if they're going to need a car or not.
And a home, because if you're living in a city, right. I mean, it's very unlikely that you're going to buy a piece of property in New York City or San Francisco, given the prices.
Definitely.
And you're also coming to us with a lot of debt, most millennials. How much is that debt weighing over many of the decisions that millennials are making?
Oh my gosh, it's huge, and it completely relates to why you wouldn't want to get a car or why you wouldn't be able to buy a house. Is because you're just loaded with this debt. And I know so many people that are getting out of college. They don't have jobs yet, and they have all of this college debt, and they just don't know what to do. And of course, buying a car, buying a house is the last thing that you're thinking about. And it kind of goes back to what you were saying about how, millennials are kind of gravitating towards these bigger cities, and also that not having to buy a house kind of thing. And I think that's just going to have to come later when they're more settled and everything. But as far as the debt goes, or millennials, don't want to increase that or whatever. They're trying to, my older sister is actually a lawyer, and she, graduated law school and all that stuff. She's now at a defense attorney place or whatever, whatever you call those things. And, she has all this debt from law school because before law school she went to med school, so she's got the med school debt, and now she's got the law school debt, and now she's just trying to pay for her apartment and go to her law office every day. So I think until they can kind of pull themselves out and really handle what they're doing and everything, they're not going to be interested in these different industries that I guess need their business. Okay,
so we're talking about millennials not buying homes, not buying cars, not having time to play golf, not wanting to go out and shop in department stores, so the malls are going to be more empty. I'm also reading, and this makes a whole lot of sense, that millennials are neglecting to take their allotted vacation time, 43% qualifying as work martyrs, a category of people who feel guilty about taking time off.
Right.
And they've got to keep working, I mean, just to keep up on that treadmill of debt. So how much of all of that is related one to the other?
Oh, first of all, I completely agree with that. Because I don't like to take time off just because I'm afraid that someone else is going to come in, like, do my job better or something. And I know a lot of other millennials that will say the same thing. And it's also kind of like you were saying with that debt, you got bills to pay, you got school to pay back and everything. It's vacation time, and especially that guilt. I think it's really interesting how millennials have to work so hard to get that job because there are so many different stereotypes, I guess, against them. So I feel like once they get the job, they're afraid to take time off from it.
But I think that millennials, the ones I know, my children, are very creative. Mm-hmm. They're very forward-thinking. They're very collaborative. They look at other cultures and other people with openness. I mean, I love the millennials that I know. I mean, but you're living under a cloud, not only the debt, but of disruptive innovation, which we've talked about a lot on this podcast. I mean, the fact that you don't know. I mean, you're killing various industries, but other industries are dying with or without you, and you may be on a slippery slope within your own job environment.
Exactly. And I think a lot of millennials aren't really thinking about what industries are kind of going in and out, and I think they are trying to find kind of like the trendy jobs or like the jobs that they know are going to like stay up and not just kind of like falls to the wayside, I guess.
But how do you know that? How do you even predict that?
I feel like there's obviously those staple jobs that will never go anywhere. Like you can be a lawyer, you can be a doctor, you can be a dentist. Like no one's ever going to get rid of those. But I guess what are some jobs that are just going to fade? I guess it's kind of what you have to think about when like moving forward and like when you're trying to find what job you want and everything. I've just always known I wanted to be in media, so that's kind
But the media is changing and morphing dramatically. I've been in broadcasting most of my life, and a lot of that is moving toward more defined broadcasts like podcasts. So things are always changing. What about the notion that millennials really want to own their own businesses and they don't want to be dependent and they don't want a 9-to-5 job? Is that true in any material way, or is that just something, again, that we say you're killing the 9-to-5 work week? Is that true?
Right. So this is so funny because when I was reading this study, I would just remember I heard my dad's voice in the back of my head because he always told me, he was like, you have to be your own boss. And then I would have, no one really wants to work a 9-to-5. I feel like working a 9-to-5, of course, that's the standard. That's how it's always been. But from the millennials I know, I work a 9-to-5. I work more than 9-to-5. But it's just kind of like it's not fun. It's not something that's, I guess, enjoyable to like have a 9-to-5 just because it's like. And plus, millennials are doing a lot of different things. Like, I know so many millennials that have, like, multiple jobs. So they're not just, like, going to one place and having a 9-to-5. They're having, like, 3 different jobs. And, like, so
but is that a good thing, or is that by necessity? Do they want that?
Oh, no, I think it's definitely by necessity. First of all, I don't know anyone that wants 3 jobs. And second of all, I think, like, I don't know, maybe, like, personally, I like to have, like, one job. Like, I like to know what I'm doing. I like to have every day kind of be different and everything. But I also know people that like don't like to just like sit at a desk, and like millennials, I feel like there's a reason why those like fidget toys or whatever are so popular. Like of course they're popular, with kids and everything. But I see so many adults with those like fidget toys. I feel like it's just because like millennials and like these upcoming generations just can't like sit still. I know when I'm sitting at my desk, producing shows, I get super fidgety. I'm just like, I need to like walk around or something.
But how much then, if you walk around, are you holding your smartphone, communicating with someone long, away and far from you, or are you happy with your environment and the people around you? Or, I'm just trying to figure out with millennials whether they're always looking to better deal whatever situation they're in at the moment.
Yeah, what's really funny? Okay, I was speaking on like this point that you're making. It's so funny. I was talking to some of my friends and everything, and we were talking about different studies because I love talking about this kind of stuff. And they were saying how, like, a lot of people, or, like, I had read somewhere that a lot of millennials don't like to confirm plans with people because they think something better will come up. And I feel like that's also kind of like how jobs are sometimes with millennials. Like, they're like, not that they're afraid to take a job, but like, they don't want like a 9 to 5. They don't want to be stuck in a certain job because like, oh, well, what if they can get a better job somewhere else? But I just feel like that kind of relates. You know what I mean? Like, they don't want to confirm with their certain friends because they think another cooler thing might
yes.
come up and they don't want to be stuck in a situation. Yeah, it's just like...
Well, I think your attention
so
span, not only millennials, I'm sure the Z generation too, is a little bit interrupted by the social media technology that has been governing your life for a while. I'm reading also in one of these studies that the Wall Street Journal told us that millennials are ruining the sport of running. Now, many people are runners or joggers or active walkers and so forth. What's the deal with running? Because I see a lot of young people still running, no?
You know, I haven't seen that study, but I quite honestly don't agree with it just because I was in cross country growing up. I was in, track. I go to the King's College now in the financial district, and I'm pretty sure they even have a runners club. Like, I know so many people that are constantly running. So it's really funny how certain things come out with millennials because I completely believe in like the hardworking millennials, and of course there's where they kind of get their stereotype. There are, of course, some millennials that are still stuck in the basement of their parents' house and everything.
All right, so that stereotype, what do you want to say about that particular stereotype?
The one that they're stuck in, where millennials are stuck in their parents' basement?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I think every generation has that group, if you can be so broad, that group of people or part of the generation that is like not motivated. Like everyone has that, the reason millennials are getting so harshly criticized is because, we all grew up on social media, like our attention spans are like gnats, or what I know my attention span is not very long because I'm like, oh, like what's the next thing? What's going on? And it's just like, so speaking of attention spans, I'm like, wait, what are we talking about?
Now, well, we'll move on. What
so
cut
funny.
is really hurting you the most when you hear that you're also ruining movies because we're all watching our own media, or that you're destroying church going, or you're not even going on cruises? Well, I don't like cruises either, but tell me, is there one particular thing that millennials and the Z generation are being accused of that you think is totally unfair?
Oh my goodness. I was asked this question like recently as well, and it was just like, it's hard to really pinpoint like something particular about the millennial generation that is like, oh, well, this is true for a fact. You know what I mean? It's so hard to like find something that is, true to everyone kind of thing.
But broadly speaking, are some of these things
right.
true about church going, about watching movies out in a theater? Are these things generally true? Both of them are social activities, whereas people are finding their own spiritual niche, or they're staying at home, or they're watching something on their phone. Is that generally true?
Yes. First of all, to answer your question, yes, I do think that is true, just because as social as millennials are, they're also very, like, antisocial. We like to be with our friends all the time. We like to meet new people. That's, of course, a thing. But it's also, and it totally ties back to why I do my grocery shopping online and why we all shop online and everything, is because we just don't want to deal with people. So I feel like those kind of studies are definitely true. You know what I mean? About millennials, like, as speaking very broadly, of course, that millennials are very social, but they're also, like, very antisocial, and that of course affects a lot of different things, like going out to the movies. Like, why would I go out to the movies and have to deal with a bunch of people when I can just, I don't do this personally just because I don't know how to do it. But like pirating movies, like that's a thing. People do that. I have no need to. I kind of like going to the movies, sometimes. But there are like things that people like don't like to do as much, like going to the movies. And I think that is definitely something that can be a broad assumption, I guess, of the millennial generation.
Well, this study that I'm referring to also talks about your relationships pretty openly and honestly, and I'm almost embarrassed to be asking you this, but it says millennials are just not having as much sex, they're dating less frequently and more casually, and they're doing a number to marriage as well. Do you want to say anything about these really intimate issues?
Yeah, so I did read a study recently on this. I thought it was really interesting because, you know, personally, like I'm not into that, but Tinder, of course, is a big thing, so that makes dating extremely casual, I think, just because there's a certain thing that goes along with Tinder that is just kind of assumed, you know what I mean, like you're gonna meet up, like stuff's just gonna happen. That's just kind of like what Tinder is for, and it definitely makes dating extremely easy, and because you're just swiping right or left if you like someone, you know what I mean? You don't even have to go into the coffee shop and make eye contact and have like a whole like romantic story. It's just like, oh, do I like this?
Yeah, well, you also are killing, we're told,
the
the dinner date for the reasons that you're mentioning.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, you're meeting up, and like I was saying, Tinder just has a certain connotation or whatever that goes along with it, and that definitely messes up the first date, I think, because you don't have like the cute story or whatever, you know what I mean? Like my parents have a really cute story on how they met. Like you don't have like that cute story anymore, so like why waste time with like a nice dinner? You know what I mean? I feel like they're just kind of like, oh, let's just get right to it, or you know, they just have different view on how they want to like live their lives and to have their relationships, if that makes sense.
If you look at baby boomers and you look at your own parents or you look at parents of friends of yours, what do you think we had or still have that you would like to see in the millennial Z generation? Would you like to see that tender moment or the great story or that wonderful quirky way that you met? I mean, what is it that you think you're missing out on?
You know, this is so funny because I was talking right before I left work today. I was talking to one of my coworkers, and he was telling me about, you know, how he was growing up in like the 1960s in like rural Ohio, and I was just fascinated by what he was telling me. Like his uncle had this like bar on like the, you know, Route 66 or something, whatever it was, you know, some kind of route, and it was connected to his house, and they used to go fishing. I miss the like authenticness, I guess, of and just kind of like innocence. That's really what I miss. I think I'm more of like, I guess, an old soul, and like I listen to 80s music. I should have been alive in the 80s.
Yeah, but you should be listening to the 60s. That was the best music. I mean, don't you?
Oh, no, 60s. Yeah, the 60s, 70s, and 80s. If you go to my Spotify, that's all I'm.
I mean, do you have anything in your generation that comes anywhere near the Beatles, the Beach Boys, Bob Dylan? No.
That it makes me so. It's kind of that innocence. You know, I really don't like to listen to a lot of music today just because I think it's so like vulgar, and it's just like it's not, yeah, you know, it's not like pure and like nice, and it's like the Beatles is so cute, you know what I mean? Like I don't know, like, and like the Bob Dylan, like I love Bob Dylan. It's so sad to see how like 12-year-olds, you know, either dress or act or what, you know, like I see like on social media, like on have you seen those like different things on Instagram, like 16-year-olds now versus when I was a 16-year-old, like that kind of thing? I feel like everyone's just kind of growing up a lot faster. Everyone, you know, every 12-year-old has to be like 21 or something. So there's like this innocence and that's what I miss the most.
But what is it that we can learn from you? I mean, if you do look at the way that you are, millennials in general, about equality, which was something that we had to struggle for and fight for back in the 1960s. You guys believe in it, I think, in your hearts, economic and the political state of the world. You're a lot more open to new ideas and other types of people. I mean, is that something we can learn from you?
Oh, of course. So and, you know, actually, now that you mention it, going back to your other question of what is a very common thing about millennials, they're all extremely open-minded. You know, you know, living in New York City, it's Pride Month, of course, and there were so many young people going out to celebrate Pride or whatever. You know, I mean, like there was huge parades going on in Greenwich Village and everything. And of course, I think that there are a lot of there's a lot of things you can, like the older generations and of course the upcoming generations should learn from millennials. You know, they are so open-minded to the LGBT community, LGBTQ community. They're so open-minded to like women's rights and they're very vocal on like, you know, what women should have and what women, you know, like equality pay and everything. So
do you think that you are being reflected well in the media today? I mean, you had that series Girls with Lena Dunham, but you've also got this new series on Comedy Central, Broad City, and you've got roommates who are kind of moving away from traditional relationships. I mean, how much of what we're going to have to understand about millennials who are going to be controlling the economy and the politics going forward, do you think is being reflected in the media today?
Well, like, and I think I said this a little earlier, millennials definitely have a pretty bad name as of right now. And I think, you know, over the course of this interview, we've definitely debunked a lot of it. Just because, and it's definitely going to affect like what the media is currently doing, and saying like, oh, millennials are killing off these generations. Millennials are never going to own a house because they're too busy buying avocado toast. Like, I think, of course, some of this is true. Okay, we like our avocado toast, but at the same time, it's like it's just not. I don't think it's definitely not reflecting well on the millennial generation, and they're not getting all the credit they do deserve. Because I know so many like hardworking millennials that aren't, you know, stuck in their parents' basement, that aren't buying, you know, the $5 Starbucks and everything. They're actually saving their money. So I think the millennials should be a little bit more, I guess, courteous to the millennial generation.
Okay, let me ask you one more question, Pavlina. And you've been a focus group for us about millennials, and we really appreciate that. When you look at it, you were born and raised during a period when we had a financial meltdown, financial institutions, and you've got a lot of debt, and I'm sure that that has weighed on you because we're all products of the era in which we grew up and the political leadership at the time and the events that took place. For me, it was the Civil Rights Movement and John F. Kennedy. Yeah. Who is it for you? What is it for you that defines the way you look at the future and hope and possibility? What is it that you're seeing in America, your America?
Oh, my gosh. Well, of course, President Trump is going to have a major effect on what is going to happen in our country. And it obviously a lot of millennials are very against what he is doing. And I think that's just going to have a major impact on, of course, the next 4 years, but then also the, you know, years to come, you know. So I think he's definitely going to be a major player in the way people view America and everything, because, you know, he's not the typical politician, but then people also, like, really hate him. So I think he's definitely a major player, but then...
Well, would you say the war on terrorism? Would you say the financial meltdown and where it's left your parents or others? What is another defining aspect to the way that you will frame issues going forward because they were a part of your life?
Right. And okay, yeah, like you were saying, the war on terrorism. My first internship actually was with Sean Hannity on his radio show, and one of the first he had interviewed me a couple times on his show, and one of the first things he asked me, like when I was 16 and I had done this internship with him, was, you know, this was like kind of, I think this is like when like ISIS was like just forming and like we were just starting to get like worried about them and everything. So, and kind of like to my point with, you know, why Donald Trump is like a big person, I guess, right now in everyone's lives is this war on terrorism. People are terrified. People, you know, the reason, you know, he got elected, I think, is because people want that wall. They want the border wall, because, you know, we're going to grow up and I know so many like millennials that are just scared, especially like living in New York, and people are terrified that something's going to happen. Like, everything that, you know, like, oh my gosh, something happened in Midtown. Is it a terrorist attack? Like, everyone just kind of assumes. Like, and yet that's actually a really interesting thing. Anytime some kind of like incident happens, everyone always thinks it's like a terrorist attack. So I think that's going to be a major, like, just not like, it's not like a single event. So I'm trying to, like, it's not like
that war on terrorism hovers over you in your thought process all the time. Yeah, interesting.
Exactly.
Well, Pavlina, I want to thank you for being part of America Trends podcast today.
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
If you like this episode, please leave us a kind rating or review. I'm on my hands and knees. Please do it on iTunes, because your review is really critical for us to continue providing this podcast. And John, I know that iTunes looks at this. They want to make certain that we have some rankings, some visibility, and that we're getting some traffic, and then they give you better positioning.
Absolutely. And this way it'll put us in the forefront so you can find us much easier on your iPhone or or Android, whatever you may be using.
And they may even send you out an alert. So please, if you can, don't miss a single episode of America Trends Podcast. And, John, they can subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher.com.
And also subscribe on our website.
Oh, absolutely.
We send out a little blurb, and we can also take your emails there at newsletter@rifkinradio.com. That's another way to get us.
And we do not sell or share
no
our lists.
spamming, nothing.
Well, I don't know. Does anybody want our lists? I don't know, but we don't do it.
Good question.
Even if they asked us.
Even
Nobody's
if they
asked us. But.
Right.
And when you do subscribe, let us know on Facebook and Twitter. We're getting very active on Facebook and Twitter. Our handle on both platforms, and John, this is really easy, @Trends Podcast. That's it.
That's real easy.
You like that? Did you get that?
I got that.
Okay.
I'm going to have to
gonna
check
give you
it
a
out
quiz.
now. I'm going to have to twit it.
We want to thank you, of course, personally for subscribing. And we also would like to get some of your ideas and questions for future episodes of America Trends Podcast. And that's important, too, because we're all over the map. Our interest editorially in the future, John, has no bounds. But we want to know what it is that you'd like to hear from us. If there was a segment that you'd like to see us follow up on, or if there's something in depth that you'd like us to deal with, please let us know that, too.
We're looking at the future. There's so much we can look at.
Yeah, and the topics that we've dealt with, I mean, we have gotten such incredible guests over the recent period, but they're only going to come to us if they know we've got an engaged and interactive audience.
Absolutely.
So it's really important that you become part of this podcast in so many different ways that we're sharing with you today.
You're absolutely right. We need your support and your help and your reviews.
And your ideas.
And ideas.
Or questions on Facebook and Twitter. And by the way, you can direct message us @Trends Podcast or using the hashtag Trends Podcast. You can also add an email address if you have a public one that you'd like us to give out.
Yeah, good. Hey, and you know what? We didn't mention Amazon.
Oh, yes. We have an Amazon store.
Yes.
And so if you go up, you don't have to buy the things that might be highlighted at that particular time. You can buy any book, and there's some benefit that comes back
Just
to
put
us.
what you're looking at in the little search engine block there, and it'll take you right to Amazon, and it'll help us out.
Absolutely. And it doesn't really cost you anything more because they have built that into their pricing structure. So we get a little taste and you get more programming like this and you get the item that you were looking for. So it works for all of us.
It's a win-win.
Absolutely. Win-win-win.
Win-win-win.
So for more information on America Trends and for the latest updates on upcoming episodes, be sure to like our page on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. You can find us at Trends Podcast. And again, you can find John and I here in our studio performing as best we can for you.
That's right.
And
Let us
making
out.
What's that?
Let
They're
us
not going to
out.
let us out. No one is. Hey, listen, thank you so much for joining us today on America Trends. We'll see you next time.
We hope to hear from you soon.
Oh, by the way, we are posting all the time. And we're posting on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Good point.
So just be aware, if you're looking for new episodes, they're coming on Tuesdays and Thursdays. When you wake up, before you go out on your jog or your walk and you want to take us with you, we'll be there for you.
Very good.
All right. Have a great day.